Shalom. Call Halim La Yahweh Bashem, Yahushai Bashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And a sincere shalom to 144,001 third. So, you hearing these talks of war, you're seeing more war break out, and we know who the winners are going to be. It's not going to be the Edomites. It's not going to be, the chief prince of the Edomites, right? Russia. It's not going to be Amalek. It's not going to be none of these individuals. Not going to be Elam. It's not going to be Moab. A lot of Jakes. I see a lot of Jakes say, oh, you better learn Mandarin. You better get ready because China's next. See, Jake doesn't have a ruling mentality. Jake sees himself as a servant. Not all Jakes, but there are Jakes out there, man. They don't have no hope. They don't have no faith because their true hope and faith is Yahweh. All right, and they're going to be forced, the non-elect, they're going to be forced to have faith and hope in Yahweh when in a kingdom. Okay, at that point it won't even be hope and faith. They're just going to be forced into righteousness. So let's go to Psalms, the 94th chapter, because guess what? This is the time of war. All right, this is war right here. We ain't in no peace. It's just a matter of time till Babylon the Great has a false flag and they blame it on Iran or Russia or whoever. And we know for a fact that Russia, China, Ishmael, Elam, they're going to actually attack this place. So this is Psalms 94 and verse 16. Who will rise up for me against the evildoers? Or who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity? Yeah, that's the hopeful elect right now. That's not with this evil system. You got people that cut off their private parts, say they're another gender. All right, you got the devil, the literal bases of men ruling the earth, spreading his wine, people getting drunk off his wine. You got the Moism, all right, the alphabet lifestyle. You got people out here just breaking the law, statutes, and commandments, and guess what? They know it's wrong. The scriptures throughout history, the scriptures were primarily sourced to the Israelites. Now, you had some heathen that were forced to convert. What was it? John Hyrcanus, and I think it was some Sumerians or Samaritans, if I'm pronouncing that right. But guess what? The world itself, the nations itself, quote unquote Christianity is number one religion in the world. Now, I'm not saying Christianity is the gospel, but what I'm saying is that they have a Bible, right? They can read Yahweh's word. They know that certain things are written to do and certain things are written not to do. People know about Sodom and Gomorrah, and you got Pink City over there in our land with the tiny tops. They got Pink City over there. That's Sodom and Gomorrah all over again. Bestiality is legal in certain parts in Babylon the Great, and if a tiny top in Babylon the Great or really any part of the world does something bad, they can seek asylum in the quote unquote Holy Land, right? And be PDF files over there. Yeah, all that. Let's reread that again. Psalms 94 and 16. Who will rise up for me against the evildoers? Or who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity? So ultimately it's Yahweh that's going to lift up that standard when Esau comes with his mischief. Okay. And ultimately, that ultimate standard is going to be when Yahushua returns. This is Revelation 6 and 2. And I saw and behold a white horse, which is a chariot, a quote unquote UFO. And he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And that bow is not literal, all right? It just represents war, because Yahushua is going to be launching concentrated beams of energy at people, and that crown represents rulership. And Yahushua, when he returns, he's coming to upgrade the elect, all right? Upgrade the elect, which is second covenant. And then he's coming to kill and destroy the nations, primarily the Edomites, okay? And guess what that's going to lead to? I think that's also in Revelations, might be the second chapter. This is what Yahweh return is going to lead to. This is the winner. These are I'm finna read you the winners of World War III right here. Revelations 2 and verse 26. And he actually verse 25. But that which ye have already hold fast till I come. Yeah, we got the gospel. And he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, whether that end doesn't necessarily mean the end where Yahweh returns. It's just your end. Because guess what? Some of the elect are going to be martyrs. Okay, some of the elect are already in the spiritual realm as is right now. All right, then you're going to have elect on the earth. All right, that goes also into 2nd Ezra's, the 13th chapter. And I was meant to do a breakdown on that, but Lord's will. Let me write that down so I don't remember. 2nd Ezra's 13th chapter breakdown, because I've been meaning to do it for a while. So Revelations 2 in verse 26, and he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations. So guess what? The elect are going to have power over the nation, not equals, not subservient like we are now. We're going to be over these nations. How are we going to be over these nations? Because we're going to have immortal bodies. All right, we're going to be able to fly. We're going to be indestructible. We're not going to need oxygen. We're not going to need food. We're not going to need none of that. We're going to be able to be literally in the front of Yahweh. We're not going to sin. We're going to have full control over pretty much everything. We're going to see in other realms. We're going to be able to go in other realms. We're going to be like comic book characters, but in real life, and with no weakness. We're not going to have any weakness. Comic book characters like Superman, they got kryptonite, magic, and all this other madness, right? That can stop them. We're going to be unstoppable. That's how we're going to get the power over the nations. And he shall rule them with a rod of iron. As the vessels of a potter shall they be broken into shivers, even as I received of my father. So guess what? Yahweh Shai straight up saying that the Israelites are going to beat the crap out of the nations. They're going to get beat up. Why? Because they beat us up, and they're wicked. All right? It's ultimately because they're wicked. All right? Because if they were righteous, they wouldn't, they basically be Israelites, but guess what? They're not. They're heathens. Okay? They're as a drop in the bucket. Right? Most High Yahweh doesn't care about these nations. These nations were created to be our servants forever. These nations weren't created to rule over us, man, or be equals. They're supposed to be under us. We're supposed to have their women. They're supposed to do what we say. And guess what? They're going to keep the laws too, all right? Because we're going to force them. We're going to force them to keep the law, and they're going to go off, and then we're going to punish them. So this is this is the winner. This is the winner of World War III. Let's get this in Ecclesiasticus. The 25th chapter. So this is Ecclesiasticus, otherwise known as Sirach, 25th chapter, in verse 7. There be 9 things which I have judged in mine heart to be happy, and the 10th will I utter with my tongue. A man that hath joy of his children, and he that liveth to see the fall of his enemy. Yeah, these heathen are our enemies. They've been look at what they've done to Jake. All right, especially you so-called Negroes here in Babylon the Great. Look how they treated you, right? If you're not under the assumption that the so-called white man, the so-called Asian man, so-called East Indian man, so-called Arabic man, even the so-called Hamites, or even just ignorant Jakes, that are from Nigeria and Ghana and stuff. They think they're Africans. They think they're Hamites. They're under the assumption that they're Hamites and that they're better than the so-called black people, which are their kin, in here in Babylon. So guess what? The Most High Yahweh has done that on purpose, okay? To let the war, because the whole world knows what happened over here to Jacob. All right, they know about the Native Americans getting slaughtered. They know about the island Hispaniola with Christopher Columbus, and they for sure know about the oppression and the mistreatment of the so-called African Americans. All right, the whole world knows. They know. I seen this video from a very long time ago where Iran was holding hostages, and the only hostages they let go were so-called black people and women. And when they made mention of why they let the women and the black men and go, is because in their law that women are precious, so they let the women go, and also in their law or whatever that, or they just had sympathy for how badly Jake has been oppressed here in Babylon the Great, so they had some sympathy, right, empathy, or whatever for Jake. But that's not gonna negate their judgment. But this goes to show you that the whole world does know of the mistreatment that you so-called white people and all these nations that are subservient to Esau and want to be a part of his system have done to Jacob. Because if you go to these other countries, they're not really messing with Jake like that. There might be some stereotypes per se, but it's not like what this Babylon the Great has done. Babylon the Great got a different air, a different energy to it, because the Most High Yahweh set it up that way. And guess what? He's destroying it as we speak. This place is going to be nuked. Okay, these Edomites are going to be taken down. Amalek's going to be taken down. All these Edomites going to be taken down. These nations going to be taken down, and we're going to rule. We're going to win World War III. The elect, really the Israelites as a whole, but starting with the elect. All right, and the ultimate elect was Yahweh Shai. So with that, Shalom.